Chapter 401, The Alliance Based on Benefits. It didn't take Hansa Oh much effort to thoroughly understand the situation through the mystical demons snooping around. The one behind this hostility directed at Trunks and the Soul Destroyer was Florida of the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band. The other participants included the House of Moonlow as well as Lord of the Kyra Mercenary Band. In this world there was no eternal friends, only eternal benefits. These words had accurately summed up the situation. In the past, when Lord and Florida had been competing for power, Hansa Oh and Trunks had sided with Lord. The Night Lord had been surrounded by the four great powers in the small mountain valley. Hansa Oh had even aided him to come out of it alive. From that time the Kyra Mercenary Band and Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band had close relations with Lord and Trunks, constantly cooperating. In the eyes of outsiders, the Kyra and Soul Destroyer Mercenary Bands had seemed to have formed an alliance. However, with the Soul Destroyer rapid development in addition to Hansa Oh's blazing reputation in the Lancelot Empire, it had pushed the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band to become the fifth great power in the Valley of Sunshine. In the recent days, Trunks killing Butcher Gustav had caused the residents in the Valley of Sunshine to be alarmed. Lord and Florida, who were originally the two most promising contenders for the control over the Valley of Sunshine, had finally realized that the situation was delicate. When one's own interest was threatened, friendship and alliance were as fragile as the vows of politicians. Florida and Lord immediately joined forces. Since Adam Moonlow had been heavily injured by Hansa Oh previously, he was extremely happy to also participate in this long-planned insidious scheme. The result was Trunks being ambushed by Lord and the rest while on the way back from Janen's place, and the mercenaries with him completely annihilated. Trunks himself had been captured alive and imprisoned in a hidden cave within the belly of a mountain valley. The major powers had all sent their experts to keep watch over him. They didn't immediately kill Trunks because although Lorne and the rest coveted the wealth of the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band, they didn't have much information on the detailed layout of the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band's base. Therefore they intended to get it from Trunks' own mouth before making their next move, which would also help decrease the losses on their side. However, Trunks' tenacity was beyond their expectation. Under the rounds of torture and extortion, he still hadn't revealed any information that they'd wanted. Hence his body was tormented black and blue till he was on the verge of death. Presently in a mansion defended by the Kyra Mercenary Band within the Valley of Sunshine, the three powers were discussing when to launch their attack on the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band. The Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band had existed in the Valley of Sunshine for a long time. Lord and the others had long since known its exact location, even without Trunks telling them. Were it not for them not understanding how dangerous the terrain of that area truly was, they'd have already joined hands to wipe out the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band instead of waiting until now to make their move. In the past several days the three powers had constantly sent people to that region to explore. They had clearly seen the defensive layout on the surface and were about to make a move in a few days. The major powers in the Valley of Sunshine had been through repeated wars from which all the parties had sustained a great loss in strength. After Hansa Oh had killed Light Grand Magus Ferguson, the relationship between Florida and the Church of Light had been somewhat frail. However, with the existence of the secret silver mine in this area, their relationship slowly stabilized again. Because of Hansa Oh, Calamity Church's Dark Archmage Edwin naturally wouldn't deal with the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band. The Calamity Church and Edwin had originally been cooperating with Lord, but they had gradually drifted apart. Edwin had sought Trunks out a few times to offer his help, but Trunks had refused his good fault will. Following Trunks' disappearance, the Calamity Church's Edwin had actually made quite an effort to find out the truth of the situation. However, with the alliance of the three powers in the Valley of Sunshine and the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band being backed up by the Church of Light, Edwin didn't dare to act trashly even though he knew the truth. The 12 mystical demons had dispersed scenes of what they see constantly being reflected in Hansa Oh's mind. His brain that had been expanded by demonic magic methodically took in those images, analyzing the contents of speech and actions to gradually discover what was going on. Finally he found out the exact location where Trunks was imprisoned. As Dark Dragon Gilbert floated in the sky above the Valley of Sunshine, puffs of white clouds drifted around him. The glorious sun shone down upon the entire mountain valley, causing even the pitch-black body of the Dark Dragon to be glistening under the sunlight. Sitting cross-legged on Gilbert's back, which was much wider than a horse carriage, Hansa Oh had his eyes closed as he collected information. Suddenly he slowly opened his bright eyes. As he glanced down at the lush forest within the Valley of Sunshine, his eyes became increasingly bright. I must quickly settle the problems in the Valley of Sunshine. My steps can't just stop at this place, Hansa Oh murmured. The matters of Bretel City, the 7 Grand Duchies, the internal struggle in the Empire, the unceasing disturbances from the Church of Light, the secrets of the Cemetery of Death and the Skeletal Staff, the study of demonic magic and necromancy magic, the rivalry of the women. Too many matters were constantly piling up, waiting for him to handle. Hansa Oh now had this feeling of wanting to be able to use the doppelganger technique. Hansa Oh's increasingly heightened vision was proportionate to the growth in his ambitions and strength. Now that he looked at the various disturbances in the Valley of Sunshine, he felt that it wouldn't be very hard to deal with all of them. From the time he learned that Trunks was captured, Hansa Oh wanted to take care of all of the matters in the Valley of Sunshine in one go. Go fly downward, Hansa Oh instructed Dark Dragon Gilbert, showing him the exact location. Master, you found Trunks? Seeing that Hansa Oh, who'd closed his eyes and been silent for a long time in the air, suddenly pointing out a location for him, Gilbert couldn't help but ask suspiciously. Of course, the direction we're heading is where Trunks is held, Hansa Oh replied before urging, all right, hurry up a little. In the depths of a dark, gloomy mountain cave, Thunder Archmage Asa was still tirelessly torturing Trunks. Trunks had been roaring in madness, but after the violent electric currents had pierced through his body, in addition to Asa pressing a burning red iron piece on his body, Trunks couldn't bear it anymore and had fallen unconscious. However, Asa clearly had no intention of letting Trunks get off easy. Every time Trunks passed out, Asa would be sure to ruthlessly woke him up. After a few rounds, Trunks was on his dying breath and no longer had the strength to roar anymore. His unfocused eyes carried a deep-rooted hatred as he calmly glared at Asa, his eyes containing a light which frightened Asa. Asa's guilty conscience churned in fear of Trunks' deep-rooted enmity. However, this feeling of guilt quickly turned into even more insane torturing as the burning red iron once again pressed upon Trunks' chest. Trunks could only stretch his mouth wide in agony, not even letting out a single groan. His face twisted into a terrifyingly savage expression, like a demon from stepping out from the 18th level of hell. Lord Asa, you should stop now or he might die. A swordsman named Trula came over with a frown, reaching his hand out to forcefully seize the burning iron which Asa had been clutching tightly. Asa's face darkened. He glared at Trula and said in a displeased manner, Trula, my matters isn't something your House of Moonlow can care about. I have no interest in caring about you, but Trunks' life is to be kept. This is the decision agreed by all 3 leaders. No matter how you tortured Trunks, I have no problem as long as he doesn't die. But if you kill him, we will have to bear the blame of negligence. Do not cause troubles for us. Trula wasn't afraid of Asa placing the iron in its original place, as he said coldly. Some of the injuries on Trunks' body were starting to rot. There was even pus flowing from his neck and chest. Trula, who standing nearby, involuntarily covered his mouth when he smelled the nauseating smell, disgusted as he fanned with his hand. FCK. You can still stand it? Exclamation mark. Forget about it for today. Wait until his body gets better before toying with him again. Otherwise everyone will object. As Trula said this, he had already lost his patience and walked out. A few members of the Kyra mercenary band looked at Asa in annoyance. One person chimed in, Asa, your Florida has also agreed. You'd better be more content. Don't break the rules. The others, people in the mountain cave, all revealed an annoyed expression. Even the members of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band who were stationed here with Asa also persuaded him to not make a fuss. Thinking for a while, Asa turned his head to glance at the unconscious Trunks, who was on the verge of death, the fury in his heart subsiding a little. With that many people dissuading him, Asa also didn't dare to recklessly act on his own accord so as to avoid rousing the anger of others. He understood that his position in the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band was no longer as firm due to the death of his father Gustav. What was more loathsome was that the bandit group had split up after his father died and simply didn't remain under him. Otherwise he wouldn't have had to stay in the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band and suffered humiliation. While Asa was drowned in hatred, sounds of heavy steps resounded from the outside. The sounds were very faint at first, gradually becoming clearer. "Who is it?" the still unhappy Asa shouted loudly. "Since you've already come, don't you know to report your name?" The sounds of footsteps were still approached slowly. However, the person didn't respond. Asa couldn't help but curse again. "FCK, are you mute? Don't you know how to speak? Something's not right." Trula frowned suddenly, taking out a long sword as he said to the people next to him, "Only we know about this place. What can go wrong?" "You're overly suspicious. Don't those fellows always deliver our food at this time?" "It must be them." Asa took this opportunity to say a few words to Trula. The footsteps were still approaching. The sound of each step contained a strange rhythm, giving rise to a sense of terror in people's hearts. It was as if a demon was slowly nearing, its ghastly huge mouth hidden within the darkness, ready to bite into your neck at any moment. Trula threw a disdainful glance at Asa, thinking that this bandit's son was indeed not a true mercenary. Be it Kyra mercenary band or the House of Moonlow, they were both strict and well-disciplined organizations. There would absolutely not be such a conduct of coming without giving a signal. "Brothers, be a little careful. The situation is a bit strange." Trula tightly grasped his long sword and warned the people on his side. Some experienced mercenaries from the Kyra mercenary band didn't need Trula's reminder and had already gathered together cautiously. Even Asa's group from the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band had also clearly separated from the other two powers. At this critical moment, as the three powers had only joined forces for profit, they still only trusted their own people rather than their fake allies who reluctantly cooperated for the sake of benefits. The Valley of Sunshine was precisely such a place. They were enemies, be it past or future. However, they currently stood together peacefully in the face of a common enemy. Tap. Tap. The footsteps were getting closer, becoming clearer. Trula glanced at the fire adept mage next to him and said, "Cast a flame." When that fire adept mage heard Trula's order, a fire snake meandered its way into the passage. The brown-gray wall could be seen clearly when it glided through. At this point even Asa knew that something was wrong. He stared rapidly at the only entrance. The members of the Kyra mercenary band had a tacit understanding among themselves as they formed a square formation, ready to face the incoming person's attacks at any moment. While everyone was focusing their attention on the only tunnel, a string of clear, crisp sounds suddenly rang out from Trunk's location behind their backs. All of them who had their eyes glued on the tunnel turned around to look when they suddenly heard such loud sounds breaking the silence. Right next to Trunks was Hansa Oh, with the Demon Slayer edge in hand and a darkened expression as he cut off the iron chains on Trunk's body. The durable iron chains, which were made from the recently mined mithril, broke apart with each crisp sound. The slender chain piercing through Trunk's shoulder blade was also carefully taken out by Hansa Oh. Trula's group, who had suddenly turned around, didn't know how Hansa Oh got in. There was only one tunnel which they heard the sound of footsteps from within the cave, and they'd all placed their full attention there. Yet they really hadn't seen anyone coming in from the tunnel. However, Hansa Oh had indeed suddenly appeared out of thin air, as if he'd been standing there all along. His sudden arrival was in such an eerie way that it gave people an extremely vexed feeling. Seeing the gloomy-faced Hansa Oh appear, all of the people keeping watch on Trunks inside the mountain cave felt their hearts tremble momentarily. They saw that Hansa Oh had acted as if he didn't see them and only focused on breaking Trunks' shackles with a dark expression. Unknowingly, a feeling of terror couldn't help but gradually form from the bottom of their hearts. Although Hansa Oh hadn't been present in the Valley of Sunshine, stories of him were always spreading around the valley. The people in the mountain cave, including Asa and Trula, were all experts of the three powers. Not only did they know of Hansa Oh, some of them had once witnessed with their own eyes Hansa Oh's actions. Presently, in this narrow belly of the mountain, Hansa Oh had noiselessly appeared like a ghost, only silently removing Trunk's shackles. The invisible suppression was as heavy as a mountain, causing palpitations as they grew flustered. Asa's lips were dry. He once had his hand chopped off by Hansa Oh. At that time in the mountain valley he had witnessed Hansa Oh's every blow as he struck Ferguson to death. When Hansa Oh left, the stories of him didn't disappear and were instead spread throughout the Valley of Sunshine by the mercenaries who traveled extensively. In particular, the deed of Hansa Oh beheading the Dragon Knight Celt was even more rapidly exaggerated. Asa knew full well the relationship between Hansa Oh and Trunks. He watched as Hansa Oh worked on removing the bindings of the dying Trunks with a somber countenance and icy cold chill abruptly spreading through his entire body. Asa's mind spun rapidly and he suddenly came to a very wise decision after watching Hansa Oh for only a dozen seconds. Whoosh! Asa was the first to rush into the tunnel to leave the cave, fleeing without a fight. Damned bastard! Trula turned to take a quick look, slowly cursing at Asa's shameless cowardice. Shortly after, he also felt a bit terrified, tightly gripping the long sword in his hand as he put on a strong front and looked coldly at Hansa Oh. Count Brian, this has nothing to do with you. You can't dictate the matters in our Valley of Sunshine. If you leave now, we won't stop you. Otherwise, Asa, why do you already returned? Not waiting for Trula to finish, the fire archmage next to him suddenly cried out in surprise. Trula was stunned. He didn't rebuke the underling for cutting off on the threat that he'd summoned his courage to say. Trula promptly turned around to see Asa having a bitter expression as he really returned step by step. Tap tap. The footsteps in the cave still echoed within everyone's hearts and actually became heavier. Chapter 402, Cutting Off the Tongue. 8-2. 5 meters tall creature who was made of white bones that swayed in disorder from the skeleton slowly made its way forward. This creature was formed purely from bones that were as sharp as a lance's. The bones fanned out like blooming flower petals, completely obstructing the narrow passage. With each step, a dense aura of death salted their senses, as though warning everyone that it didn't belong to this world. As a high-ranked undead creature, the bone demon had to bear the restrictions of the contract to enter this world. It brought along the netherworld's deathly aura, desolation and loathing toward the creatures in this world. As it possessed high intelligence, it could sense the fear of the creatures in front of itself. When it reached the entrance of the passage, the power of contract ordered it to halt. Its original intention to kill the creatures in front was abruptly forced to an end. When it had arrived, it had already furiously struggled against the caster's contract and understood that the caster was capable of ruining its strength, so it hadn't resisted. When everybody inside the cave looked towards Asa, they naturally saw this huge bone demon coming and completely blocking the exit. Behind the swaying sharp spears of the bone demon came the constantly echoing sound of heavy footsteps, like drum beats pounding on their panicking hearts. In the span of a few breaths, a few balls of ghostly fires lit up behind the bone demon, appearing like many lanterns that slowly drew nearer along with the footsteps. When the ghostly fires reached the bone demon, everyone could see the shadows of a few huge knights under the light from the ghostly fires as they tightly blocked the exit. At this point, everybody in the mountain cave knew that the only way out was sealed. If they wanted to leave, the only method was to kill the bone demon and evil knights. However, who knew whether there'd be countless undead creatures in addition to the bone demon and evil knights within the narrow mountain cave? If there really were a large number of undead creatures, as they didn't have a light mage, it'd simply be harder to get out alive than to reach the sky. As these people's brains quickly spun and they saw that these undead creatures had no intention of entering the cave, their anxious hearts temporarily calmed down. Their eyes couldn't help but turn towards Hansa Oh again. At this moment, Hansa Oh had cut all the chains off Trunks and had applied several colorful medicines on his body. Even the rotting wounds full of pus were cleaned up. During this process, Hansa Oh's darkened face looked terrifying. Count Brian, this is none of your business. By saving Trunks, you will become the enemy of our 3 powers in the Valley of Sunshine. You should consider carefully. Trula stammered for a while before summoning his courage to speak out toward Hansa Oh under everyone's intense gaze. Hansa Oh didn't reply, not even turning his head to glance at Trula. As he placed his right hand on Trunks' back, black rays of light entered Trunks' body from the hidden angle. The unconscious Trunks could only sense that his fading vitality once again returned little by little. Trunks gradually even felt a thread of strength. Harboring a bone-deep hatred, he abruptly shouted in his weakened condition, "Asa, I will kill you. I won't let you off even if I die." Lightning Archmage Asa clearly heard Trunks' subconscious weak shout. His face was immediately paled as white as paper, his fingers tightly gripping the magic staff. His eyes flickered as he turned to look behind. However, When he saw the bone demons' blazing eyes and evil knights riding their fire-spitting warhorses, he hastily turned his head back. After the light shout, Trunks slowly regained his consciousness. As his strength and vitality gradually recovered, he opened his eyes with difficulty. The first thing that entered his eyes was Hansa Oh's frightfully somber face. However, when he saw Hansa Oh's terrifying gloomy face, Trunks was extremely excited. His mouth pulled up into a silent wry smile, his dry lips slowly moved. "Brian, you came?" Nodding his head, Hansa Oh softly sighed and said, "I came a little late. You are already this heavily wounded." "I'm not dead, so it's not too late. As long as I'm not dead, I still have hope for revenge. Even if my arms and legs are cut off, at least I still have teeth. I want to devour these beasts!" Exclamation mark. Trunks' voice wasn't loud, but the enmity in it caused everyone to feel an endless chill. To the side, Asa felt a chill from the bottom of his heart. His eyes quickly looked around and glanced toward Trula shortly after. By another side, Trula was silently communicating with the people from the Kyra mercenary band. The gap between the three powers unknowingly narrowed as they clearly knew what should be done when facing a common enemy. Hansa Oh was indifferent to their actions, only having his eyes on Trunks. Only after Trunks finished speaking did Hansa Oh reply, "Don't worry, you've eaten a rebirth pill. Even if your tendons are cut off, I can still heal you till your previous state. Gilbert, come over here and help me take good care of Trunks." Hansa Oh shouted towards the area behind Trunks. A rumbling sound could be heard from underground, and a moment later Dark Dragon Gilbert burrowed out. When the mystical demon had spotted Trunks suffering such inhuman torture, Hansa Oh had immediately ordered Gilbert to approach from underground at the fastest speed possible while he summoned the undead creatures to seal the only way out of the cave. When Hansa Oh had made his way to Trunks' location, Dark Dragon Gilbert was still in the underground passage, hence he was a few minutes slower. After Gilbert appeared, he took a look at Trunks and his eyes became bloodshot. He instantly roared in rage, "I want to eat all of you." This period of time Gilbert had always stayed with Trunks, unknowingly giving rise their friendship. Trunks was a person of good character, treating Gilbert with extraordinary generosity. As for Dark Dragon Gilbert, apart from a few bad points, he was very upright. When he saw Trunks being tortured to the point of being unrecognizable, he couldn't suppress the rage in his heart. Stopping Gilbert with one hand, Hansa Oh instructed coldly, "Look after Trunks. As for these people in the mountain cave, just leave them to me." "Master, I want to kill them. I want to avenge Trunks too." Dark Dragon Gilbert simply couldn't bear to see Trunks' miserable state. There was even a trace of sobbing in his voice. This was the result of Gilbert's excessive wrath and grief. "Rest assured there'll be an opportunity. You and Trunks will have that opportunity," Hansa Oh solemnly vowed, and once again instructed, "Look after Trunks well. Don't let him suffer any more harm." Holding back the tears that had almost flowed out, Gilbert's voice was choked with emotions as he nodded in assent. Holding a bucket of clean water, he helped Trunks clean up the stench off his wounds. Gilbert couldn't help shouting out in sobs, "Damn it, how could you be so careless, you fool!" To Trunks, the pain had already numbed his senses. However, when he saw the Dark Dragon expressing his feelings of anger to the point of crying, and Hansa Oh forcefully repressing his anger, which caused him to appear sinister and terrifying, something warm slowly merged with the mnemonic yuan energy that Hansa Oh had transferred into his body, nourishing his injured body. "You, what do you want?" We are not afraid of you. It's best if you consider it clearly." Seeing Hansa Oh approach steadily with a gloomy expression after Trunks' injury had stabilized, Asa shouted, appearing fierce while being cowardly at heart. Not wasting any words, Hansa Oh suddenly transformed into a blood-colored streak, charging into the center of these people like lightning and casting out punches and kicks. The sounds of bones breaking echoed through the mountain cave, making one's scalp tingle. In such a narrow area, Hansa Oh's demonic arts fully displayed its advantages. As the frenzied violent attacks fell down, there was simply no one who was capable of withstanding his assault. The strongest people here were Swordmaster Trula and Lightning Archmage Asa, who were simply no threat to the current Hansa Oh. In just a few minutes, the 15 experts of the three great powers inside the mountain cave that held Trunks captive not only had their bones broken but also their tendons cut. Such an injury to the swordsmen and knights who cultivated fighting order meant that they had thoroughly become useless. To the mages like Asa, Hansa Oh cut off their tongues in addition to those injuries, hence they'd never be able to cast any magic ever again. "I won't won't kill you. When Trunks recovers, he will slowly skin you alive. Only in this way can the damage he'd suffered be compensated. Looking at the mass of meat laying paralyzed on the ground, as well as Asa constantly spitting out blood due to his tongue being cut off, Hansa Oh calmly pronounced their fate. With his tendons snapped and bones broken, Asa couldn't even let out a tragic howl, his eyes filled with despair and regret. He regretted not having killed Trunks earlier, regretted not throwing everything to the wind to kill Hansa Oh the first time Hansa Oh had come to the Valley of Sunshine. Dark Dragon Gilbert's choked voice gradually returned to normal in light of the perpetrator's suffering. Trunks' weakened body also slowly recovered some strength. With the support of the Dark Dragon and Hansa Oh's demonic yuan energy, he could even stand up with some difficulty. Trunks looked at Asa's miserable state, suddenly letting out a crazy laughter. His owl-like laughter was filled with endless resentment and unspeakable satisfaction. As Trunks madly laughed like a devil, the pain and pressure from the last few days seemed to be released along with his laughter. He stared steadfastly at Asa as he laughed to his heart's content, his eyes filled with a bone-deep resentment which enveloped Asa like an ice-cold prison, causing him to feel a chill that penetrated to his bones. Asa understood that this time in Trunks' hands the suffering he'd have to bear would be much more extreme. Asa, who had released his anger as much as he liked on Trunks' body, had no doubts that once Trunks recovered his strength, Trunks would torture him to his death. With his completely handicapped body and cut off tongue, Asa's heart was filled with only despair. Unfortunately for him, he couldn't even beg for death in his current situation and could only wait for the incoming endless suffering. After a long time, Trunks' wild laughter eventually subsided. He'd laughed to the point that tears were flowing. After his emotions calmed, Trunks remained silent for a little before speaking in a much lower tone. Brian, this time it was Lord in Florida and Adam Moonlow lying, otherwise I would have definitely escaped. Having reached the ranks of Great Sword Master within the Valley of Sunshine, only the 3 times Berserk Lorden was able to fight evenly with him. It was due to this confidence that Trunks dared to act without fear. Unfortunately, he had underestimated the despicableness and shamelessness of others and had been captured alive in an ambush. Say no more, I already know. None of them shall escape your revenge, I promise. Hansa Oh took in a deep breath and calmly promised Trunks. Brian, I could never have expected Lorden to make a move so quickly. Just the night before, Lorden was still drinking and chatting with me. I was truly too naive to actually overlook him. Trunks' smile was self-mocking, but his voice was filled with hatred towards Lorden. Hansa Oh mumbled twice, his eyes gradually becoming cold. Master, Trunks' body is still very bad. He shouldn't stay too long in this place. We should leave immediately. Dark Dragon Gilbert wiped the tear stains from the corners of his eyes. Not caring for the filthiness and foul stench from Trunks' body, he supported Trunks onto his body. Hansa Oh calmly nodded in agreement. The bone demon blocking the cave entrance suddenly walked out with a few zombie warriors following close behind. At Hansa Oh's order, they picked up all of the bodies from the ground. During this process, Hansa Oh commanded the bone demon to provide a dozen bones. Each zombie warrior made use of the bone's sharpness to pierce these people's legs like piercing grilled fish, heightening their pain. Let's go, Hansa Oh exclaimed, following up with an incantation. The undead creatures in the depths of the passage disappeared, causing the passage to appear wider. Chapter 403, Gargoyle Swarm. At the same time, when the rebirth pill helped Trunks reach the level of Great Sword Master, it also helped him reform his body, causing his meridians to be more durable than a normal person's. It was precisely because of this that Hansa Oh was able to use the demonic yuan energy to help him recover after they returned to the Soul Destroyer mercenary band's base. As expected, when Hansa Oh brought the severely injured Trunks back to the Soul Destroyer mercenary band's base, the mercenaries had the urge to almost immediately fight to the death against the 3 powers when they understood the situation. Some mercenaries even charged out in their fury and were only hauled back by Gilbert under Hansa Oh's instructions. Gilbert clearly had some standing within the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. Although the mercenaries were unwilling when they were unyieldingly hauled back by Gilbert, they still yielded to Gilbert's might. This is to be expected. A mercenary band is also a place where the strong are worshipped. The person with the harder fist would have more persuasion persuasiveness. Within the Soul Destroyer mercenary band, even the strength of Trunks was below Dark Dragon Gilbert. As Gilbert has been in the Soul Destroyer mercenary band for so long, the other mercenaries have long since understood his fearfulness and difficulty to work with. At times there was no difference between his orders and Trunks. While Gilbert was suppressing the impulsive mercenaries, Hansa Oh immediately headed toward the inner dwelling without hesitation. He instructed Gilbert without lifting his head, use cruel methods to torture those people for me. However, do keep them alive. When Trunks recovers, Trunks will end them himself. After speaking, Hansa Oh already brought Trunks to the interior of the dwelling, leaving behind Asa and the rest, whose legs have been pierced like skewers by the bone spears. As Grant and the rest looked at Asa and the rest, who had their tendons cut, their bones broken from head to toe, they still felt unresolved hatred in their hearts. Once Hansa Oh left, they followed Gilbert to each choose a victim, bringing them to the dark and damp prison area. There was an entire set of torture tools there. Bringing Trunks into a bright stone room, Hansa Oh sat cross-legged behind Trunks. His palms were placed on Trunks' back, slowly sending strands of demonic yuan energy into Trunks' body, gradually mending Trunks' damaged body. The reason why demonic yuan energy was more mystical than fighting aura was that apart from possessing enormous killing power, it could also possess more wonderful uses through practiced manipulation. Aiding the injured and recovering was one of these uses of demonic yuan energy. Trunks' current situation was that the tendons on his limbs were all snapped. However, Trunks' fighting aura still existed, and once Trunks' tendons healed, it wouldn't affect his strength. To a swordsman, tendons snapping signified that a person had become a cripple. Even stronger swordsmen would not be of any threat, hence Asa and the rest didn't do more than was required. Regardless of priests or alchemists in the profound continent, their attainments in the treatment of the body and meridians would still be beneath Hansa Oh. Hence Hansa Oh had a solution to an unsolvable problem to most people. Trunks' body, which had been reformed by the rebirth pill, was easily cleansed of disorder by the circulation of Hansa Oh's demonic yuan energy. As it treated the injuries, the demonic yuan energy became like gentle flowing water, wrapping around all the broken meridians. Hansa Oh's consciousness pried into Trunks' body, slowly reattaching the broken meridians, and then activated the surplus energy from the rebirth pill to gather around the broken meridians. Trunks' body was much stronger than an ordinary person's, but it was still far from Hansa Oh's. Hence, when Hansa Oh treated Trunks' injuries, he didn't use up much demonic yuan energy. He only needed to get familiar with the precision of meridians and to proficiently set things right. As time passed silently, Hansa Oh, who was seated behind Trunks, didn't need to focus that attentively as Trunks' condition became better. The meridians only needed to be slowly nourished by Hansa Oh's demonic yuan energy. Hence Hansa Oh was able to divert his demonic yuan energy to other matters. The disappearance of Trunks and the experts of the three powers from the cave in the mountain was discovered by the next wave of people. The three powers were all flustered, not knowing what had happened. Lord and Florida and Adam Moonlow had once again got together anxiously to investigate deeper. However, no matter how they guessed, they couldn't figure out how the extremely hidden cave was exposed. In the end, the three powers inevitably believed, after deliberating, that there was a spy within their men, inwardly thinking who among their men could be the culprit. Without a doubt, the three experts understood that Trunks was rescued and it should be related to the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. The three powers, who originally hesitated in taking action due to self-interest and all kinds of scruples, now knew that there was no turning back. Lord and the two others were experienced people, deciding together to immediately attack the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. As matters stand, wanting to destroy the Soul Destroyer mercenary band while not incurring any losses by capturing Trunks clearly wouldn't work. Although the three powers who have fought with each other for so long knew that this time around they would again incur more losses, they couldn't care too much about it anymore. At their orders, the Kyra mercenary band, Rainbow Sickle mercenary band, House of Moonlow, and another 5 or 6 smaller mercenary bands driven by prophets rapidly gathered more than 6,000 people, who brazenly departed for the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. They had no choice but to stop when they reached the location of the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. The various leaders gathered together and started to discuss how to attack the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. The terrain of the Soul Destroyer mercenary band was extremely special. It was on a protruding wall under a precipice, like a piece of rock hanging halfway up the mountain. This location was just a sheet of whiteness, paths when seen from below totally concealed by fog. There was only one route that led from the precipice above. However, if one tries to enter from above, people from the Soul Destroyer mercenary band would naturally discover it. Hence, attacking from above was an incredibly painful affair. It was certain that the losses of the few powers would far exceed their expectations. As the proverb goes, it was easier to ascend a mountain than descend from it. This saying similarly applied to battling on such a terrain. Sieging a location was always extremely difficult. That was because the process of climbing up the city walls was truly too painful. However, while climbing up a city's walls, although it was extremely disadvantageous when facing the attacks from above, it was still possible to raise your head and clearly face the sky and use your weapon to block incoming attacks. However, in this location, when descending from the precipice, it would be tough to deal with attacks from below and might even be impossible to see the situation underneath. Firstly, it was because of the fog. Secondly, they had to be more cautious while descending, as a slip would cause them to fall to their deaths. For Trunks to find such a place to be the Soul Destroyer mercenary band's base, it was an extremely wise decision. This location was hard to attack, and if anyone tried to enter, they had to pay an unimaginable price. Right at this moment, although Lord and the rest had captured Trunks alive, they didn't dare to rashly attack the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. However, after Trunks had been rescued, they had no other choice but to face this special terrain. Even the method of entering had caused them to debate for a long time. The three of them were all the astute type and understood that the one who descended first would definitely suffer the most losses. They naturally didn't want to be the first to descend. However, the others also weren't fools. None of the powers were willing to lead such a suicidal attack. Hence, when they really had to attack, the delegation suddenly halted. As they discussed, none of them were willing to let their subordinates be the first to descend. When he recalled it, the Soul Destroyer mercenary band were not in the least inferior to them, and that this was an easily guarded terrain, Lorden had a headache not knowing what to do. How about we would just keep watch over this precipice? They can't always stay within their base. Otherwise, food and water would definitely become a problem. Once they emerge from their base, we can easily kill them with our strength. We would face cruel attacks if we descend. However, it would similarly be difficult for them to ascend. We can hound them to death by blocking up this position. Florida had a darkened expression as he proposed this malicious plan. Everyone knew that this plan was useful. However, this would cause the battle to become a long war of attrition. No one could guess how much provision the Soul Destroyer mercenary band had, and if they truly wasted their time here, they were unsure if there would be problems at their own bases. All of you also know that that fellow Gilbert is a dark dragon. Furthermore, the Soul Destroyer mercenary band also has many mages that can use floating magic. If they depart and use spatial rings to transport provisions, there's no knowing how much time we would waste. I don't think this plan would work. Adam Miller thought for a while before suddenly voicing his opposition. In that case, what do you think we should do? When Florida saw that his idea was overruled, his expression became more unsightly as he asked Adam Moonlow. Staying silent for a while, Adam Moonlow seemed to be making up his mind. He raised his head to look at Lorden and Florida, saying, "Our house still has a batch of tamed flying creatures. Adding them to the current flying creatures present, they are able to carry 300 people at one time. If these 300 men are the experts from our three powers, if they utilize large-scale killing spells when they reach, they should definitely be able to hold for a short while. After that, the flying creatures will repeatedly shuttle our men down. In this way, I feel that we wouldn't need to undergo the process of slowly descending." Hearing his words, everyone was overjoyed. Florida was equally excited as he smiled and said, "Old thing, you obviously have such a good method. Why didn't you mention it earlier?" Adam Minlow's expression darkened as his eyes twitched, thinking inwardly, "Those are what is guarding my base, and I originally intended to use them to deal with you all in the end. If not for us really know having other means, why would I bring them out?" Of course, Adam Minlow naturally didn't say these words aloud, only appearing calm and silent. "Hey, with this method every issue can be solved. If we are able to annihilate the Soul Destroyer mercenary band, the contribution of your House of Moonlow is the biggest. Come, let us carefully discuss how many experts each power would send." Lorden laughed refreshingly as he shouted at the leaders of the various powers, After a whole day and night, Hansa Oh, who had brought trunks into the interior of the mountain, finally exited the cave. Gilbert, Grant and the rest quickly hurried over when they heard the news. Once Gilbert saw Hansa Oh, he hurriedly inquired, "Master, how is Trunks?" "Don't worry, after resting for a month Trunks would be able to be as before," Hansa Oh consoled Gilbert. His expression darkened soon after as he said, "The three powers and other small mercenary bands are already in the vicinity and are currently discussing how to attack us. They have 6,000 people. We must deal with them cautiously. We have 1,700 people here. Rely on the terrain advantage they can forget about easily attacking us." HMPH leader had been tormented by them till such a state. "We must make them pay the price. Whoever dares to dissent will die by our hands." Grant and Trunks were friends for many years and had even worked together in the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band. He was unable to restrain his anger and shouted loudly. Hansa Oh could totally understand Grant's anger. However, he still shared what he heard. The House of Moonlow is dispatching their secret flying creatures. These creatures can carry 300 men down each time. If there are tens of mages within this, 300 large-scale killing spells would cause an enormous obstruction to us. During that time these flying creatures can bring another 300 people down. At that time the advantages of this location would no longer exist. Hence we absolutely cannot lower our guard and must have the proper preparation. Otherwise we would definitely lose this battle. Hearing what Hansa Oh said, Grant was shocked and suddenly calmed down. He knew that if it was truly as Hansa Oh described, the 1,700 people in the Soul Destroyer mercenary band simply had no way of resisting the attack of 6,000 people. "What should we do then?" Grant somewhat anxiously inquired. "Master Lania and I will transform into our true forms and exterminate them from the sky." Dark Dragon Gilbert shouted viciously, prepared for a massacre. "If it was only 300 ordinary swordsmen, Lania and yourself transforming into your true forms would be enough. However, there are many mages within these 300 experts. The two of you definitely wouldn't be able to resist the attacks of so many experts. Furthermore, their goal is only to descend here. How many people can you and Lania prevent from coming down?" Although this is an idea, it doesn't cover all grounds. Hansa Oh looked at the eager Dark Dragon Gilbert, calming, stating the facts. "What should we do then?" This time it was the Hydra Lania who asked. The coquettish Lania and the wanton Gilbert were truly a match made in heaven. When the two lascivious races bonded, their turbulent feelings caused even Hansa Oh to be stupefied. "Yay, Master, what do you think we should do?" Gilbert had a puzzled expression as he bitterly asked Hansa Oh. "We'll follow your suggestion, with Lania and yourself intercepting them in the air. In addition, I will summon many gargoyles to help you. When they are about to land, the archers below will fire constantly. As long as the first wave of the strongest experts is killed, it would be hard for them to win this battle." Hansa Oh sneered as he replied, "Gilbert, Part 2 Lord in Florida and Adam Moonlow simply had no idea that their every move was under Hansa Oh's surveillance. They were still under the impression that their attack would be extremely unexpected and at least the first wave of flying magical creatures would be able to easily descend and cause huge problems for the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. They would then be able to unceasingly transport experts down, settling the battle in one go. Unfortunately, they would never have guessed that Hansa Oh was able to know their every intention and was able to calmly put in place preventive measures to attack their hidden descent head-on. With a large number of gargoyles, Hansa Oh had confidence in dealing a disastrous setback to the first wave of experts. Once most of the experts in the first wave were killed, not only would it have a great impact on their morale, the next wave of experts would also be afraid to descend on the flying magical creatures. With the advantageous terrain, Hansa Oh believed that the three powers wouldn't achieve what they wanted this time around. The 12 mystical demons scrutinized every action of the three powers. Hansa Oh methodically instructed Grant and the rest to gather the mercenaries that were good at shooting, distributing all the various bows and arrows. Even the spears and javelins were all brought out in preparation to face the first wave of experts on the flying magical creatures. As time passed silently, Lordan and the rest had discussed for a long time, Finally they determined the 300 experts in the first wave, and they would be protecting tens of valuable mages. The first wave could be described as the concentration of the strongest experts in the few powers, with the weakest swordsmen which were included in the first wave also reaching the rank of senior swordsman. The dead of night was able to conceal their movements. At night the fog would also become denser, hence the operation was expectedly arranged to be a night mission. As the full moon slowly rose into the sky and shined gentle moonlight, the lofty precipice was shrouded in white mist. More than 200 harpies, frost eagles, griffins, pegasus and various flying magical creatures were formed into teams. They were gathered from the house of Moonlow under Adam Moonlow's orders. The 300 experts picked out from the various powers were ready and waiting for these flying magical beasts to appear. At the instructions of the heads of the three powers, all of them mounted the tame magical creatures. The leaders Adam, Moonlow and Florida were also among them. Florida himself was a mage and didn't require any flying magical creature mount. Adam Moonlow rode his super rank golden winged rock, which had finally recovered after he had spent a huge amount of resources on it. However, the feathers on the golden winged rock were very sparse, making it look a little miserable. The golden winged rock was in such miserable circumstances due to protecting Adam Moonlow. It was also because of Adam Moonlow's endless hatred toward Hansa Oh that he made a move on Trunks. Although Lorne could reach thrice berserk and his strength was higher than both Adam Moonlow and Florida, he still was unable to fly. Furthermore, they needed someone to control and arrange matters for the majority left behind. Hence Lorne rationally stayed behind to take charge instead of joining the first wave of attack. Under the hazy moonlight the flying magical creatures spread their wings, forming a screen in the sky which obstructed the moonlight. Lifting his head as he gazed at the ascending magical creatures, Lorne was actually somewhat uneasy. Actually, ever since Trunks had suddenly been miraculously rescued, Lorne had an uneasy feeling. This was because no matter how he saw it, the Soul Destroyer mercenary band should have sunk into frenetic circumstances after they lost their leader Trunks. He was clear about Dark Dragon Gilbert's strength, but as he had been in contact with Gilbert before, Lorne knew that Gilbert was purely a subordinate and definitely wouldn't be able to come up with any meticulous plans. The reason why Lorne waited for so long was that he firmly believed that the Soul Destroyer mercenary band would leave their natural stronghold and attack. At that time they would be able to easily annihilate the Soul Destroyer mercenary band's experts. However, the Soul Destroyer mercenary band's ability to stay calm surpassed his expectations. Not only did they not exit their natural stronghold, they even recalled all their experts in the surroundings. When the news of Trunks' disappearance had spread, Lorne was truly surprised. After much contemplation, he gradually felt that there was another hidden hand within the Soul Destroyer mercenary band controlling the ground. It was precisely because of this hidden existence that the Soul Destroyer mercenary band were able to stabilize and slowly start to organize their resistance. I must be thinking too much. Currently it has reached an important period of time within Austin City. That fellow shouldn't have come. Lorne rubbed his head as he muttered to himself. Leader, it would be absolutely safe this time around. The person you are worried about wouldn't appear. I've received news yesterday that he is definitely still within Austin City. It is impossible that he would show up in the Valley of Sunshine. Don't worry, we will definitely be able to eradicate the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. Harris understood what Lorne was worried about. The reason why Lorne had chosen to act this time around was precisely because he was sure that Hansa Oh was too busy to worry about the matters of the Valley of Sunshine. Otherwise Lorne might still be hesitating. I hope that is the case. Although Trunks was frightening, he still isn't my primary concern. Only that fellow would be the most troublesome opponent. Ah, it's a pity. Trunks and that fellow are true men. If not for Trunks' Soul Destroyer mercenary band becoming the biggest threat to our mercenary band, perhaps I could still be friends with them. Lorne sighed as he said to Harris, this is their choice. When they first arrived in the Valley of Sunshine, Leader had already tossed them an olive branch only for them to reject it. Now that things have reached this point, Leader can't be blamed to have acted ruthlessly. This is all due to their ambition to seize the power in our hands. Harris knitted his brows as he reassured Lorne, forget it, let's drop the conversation. However, I feel that something's not right. I hope that Florida and Adam Moonlow wouldn't disappoint me this time. Lorden's bald head was illuminated by the moonlight. This meant that Adam Moonlow's flying magical creatures no longer concealed the moonlight and had already entered the foggy area. Everyone be careful. Although they are unable to notice us, we still need to be attentive and be cautious of any changes, Adam Moonlow said to the surrounding people while on his super rank Golden Winged Rock. Leader be at ease. We know what needs to be done. The people from the House of Moonlow smiled as they responded, grasping the magical staffs in their hands tightly, prepared to deal with any possible changes. A short distance away from Adam Moonlow's flying troop, Florida's eyes sparkled as he carefully watched for any potential anomalies. He then softly whispered to his trusted aides as though discussing details of the operation later. As the wave of people passed through the dense fog, they reached an area where the fog was thinner. In a few hundred meters they would have entered the territory of the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. A huge indistinct shadow gradually appeared from within the thin fog, transforming into a dark dragon. Gilbert's lantern-like eyes stared at the 300 intruders. Without saying a word, a dragon breath which was mixed with a fishy smell was shot out. Having evolved into a rank 2 magical creature, the toxins in Gilbert's breath was even more frightening. In such a humid environment, the strength of the toxins was enhanced substantially. More than 10 swordsmen and mages who rode on harpies were the first to be sprayed head-on by Gilbert's breath. An extremely stifling feeling was suddenly felt on their chests, as if they were suddenly being crushed by a mountain. Apart from the harpies, who were also poisonous magical creatures, the humans were all dizzy with blood flowing from their nose and mouth. Besides the toxins, the force of the dragon breath was also equally terrifying. The harpies shrilled loudly as they swayed, throwing off more than 10 people in the process. Dark dragon. It's that dark dragon. Terrified shouts could suddenly be heard. Some people have clearly spotted Gilbert. Hey, all of you, dare to come to my territory, die for me. Gilbert's imposing voice resounded through the sky. With a swing of his neck, a raging fireball was shot out, burning down more than 10 magical creatures and humans who had scattered. Attack! It's just a dark dragon, there's nothing to be afraid of. Adam Moonlow, who had just arrived, suddenly shouted aloud. The wings of the Golden Winged Rock underneath him suddenly set off a hurricane covering an area of 10 meters, directing Gilbert's fireball to the side. Riding the Golden Winged Rock, Adam Moonlow, who held a pike which sparkled in silver radiance, charged toward Gilbert like lightning. On the other side, a few mages who had steadied themselves interweaved magic spells and continuously shooting them toward Gilbert. If it was only Adam Moonlow, Gilbert wasn't afraid. However, just as Hansa Oh described, the first wave of attack, which gathered the strongest experts from the 3 powers, was definitely not something Gilbert could deal with himself. Several magic spells of different types suddenly flew over, and Gilbert had no choice but to dodge the attacks and hide within the dense fog. HMPH, with just a dark dragon, what can you achieve? Adam Moonlow loudly ridiculed, waving his hand, and said, our whereabouts are exposed. We need to quickly head to that place. We must not delay and give them the chance to prepare. Charge. After tonight, the Soul Destroyer mercenary band would forever disappear from the Valley of Sunshine. Florida similarly shouted, coldly utilizing floating magic to take the lead toward Adam Moonlow's location. Hoo-oo, hoo-oo. Strange noises suddenly appeared from all directions. That's weird. What's that sound? A mercenary said what was on everyone's mind as everyone looked around puzzledly, not knowing what was that queer sound. Out of a sudden, a dense crowd of creatures enveloped them like a dark cloud, as dense as a swarm of locusts. They saw thousands upon thousands of gargoyles that were ranged in orderly lines, rapidly approaching the area. Gargoyles aren't formidable undead creatures. Their individual fighting strength was lower than any flying magical creature from the House of Moonlow. However, gargoyles usually appeared in groups. There would definitely not be just 1 or 2 gargoyles appearing. This time around, with his greatly improved mental energy, Hansa Oh had summoned more than 4,000 gargoyles at once, which seriously seemed like a dense dark cloud. Any living creature at scale would be extremely terrifying, even for mosquitoes and ants. Once they were at scale, they would also be the nightmare of stronger creatures. For gargoyles who individually had an extraordinary attack, once they were at scale, they would naturally naturally be more terrifying. When the surrounding gargoyles seemed to fill up the entire space, the first wave of experts who had thought that their sneak attack wouldn't be detected were all momentarily stunned. Light mages, purify these filthy existences for me. Florida was only distracted for 2 seconds and was the first to shout out orders when the gargoyles were getting closer. After he shouted, Florida himself started to act rapidly, retrieving his magic staff and reciting a magic spell. A ring condensed from light elements suddenly flew toward the gargoyle swarm. The ring immediately turned 30 gargoyles into ashes when it charged into the gargoyle swarm. There were another 7 light mages within this group of experts. They were unwilling to fall behind, all of them unleashing the light magic they were proficient at when they saw Florida making his move. As each light magic spell entered the gargoyle swarm, they really caused huge damage to the group of gargoyles. However, the strongest Florida was only a light archmage. The stronger of the rest were only adept mages, while the weaker ones were only novice mages. There was a limit to the strength of the light magic they could unleash, and a loss of 200 gargoyles was simply negligible when compared to their total number of 4,000. Idiots! Undead creatures do fear light magic, but other elements of magic were also useful. Why are all of you staring blankly over there? Act quickly! When Moonlow saw that the remaining mages merely watched when the light mages acted, he cursed them exasperatedly. Being scolded by Moonlow, these people suddenly reacted. The mages started chanting different spells one after another. Wind blades, lightning and fire serpents whistled as they flew from every direction toward the gargoyles, suddenly causing the deaths of another 400 to 500. However, at this moment the gargoyles had finally charged into their ranks. Groups of gargoyles scattered, clawing and biting specifically at these mages. The magical creatures under them also spared no effort in battling the gargoyle swarm. Suddenly magnificent rays of light radiated in the whole sky as a dark shadow flew about, accompanied by mournful cries from time to time as one person after another fell from the towering height, their bodies torn and their bones crushed. Wakaka, I am here again. I want to see how do you all beat me this time around. Dark Dragon Gilbert shouted arrogantly, once again his enormous body extending out. By Dark Dragon Gilbert's side, Hyderlania was like an enormous octopus charging together with Dark Dragon Gilbert towards the experts who were attacked by the gargoyle swarm. Florida, we meet again. Hansa Oh's voice suddenly sounded. Within another wave of gargoyles, Hansa Oh had a dark expression as he walked on the air toward Florida. Behind Hansa Oh, the numerous gargoyles whistled and danced violently as an enormous undead flying creature slowly appeared from within the gargoyle swarm. The majestic little skeleton raised his 3-meter-long bone spear as he rode on the bone demon, closely following behind Hansa Oh. Chapter 404, I learned it from you. When the first gargoyle appeared, Florida already knew that the fiend had arrived. However, this battle had no turning back. Hence Florida attacked without regard, attempting to first decrease the number of undead creatures as much as possible and forcefully charging to the Soul Destroyer mercenary band's base and fight them to the death. Countless gargoyles surrounded Hansa Oh, accompanying Hansa Oh as he headed toward Florida. At this moment Florida was frightened, but the ire in his heart also couldn't be contained, unwaveringly staring at Hansa Oh with a hostile gaze. Florida had no reason not to hate him. From the day Hansa Oh arrived at the Valley of Sunshine, it seemed to have cemented Florida's ill fortune. Firstly, Hansa Oh snatched away Phoebe, who Florida fancied. Soon after, he had grouped together with Florida's archenemy Trunks. He also embarrassed Florida time and time again, even seriously injuring him in public. Besides that, Hansa Oh had even wrecked their meticulously planned ambush, violently killing his beloved grandfather, causing his relationship with the Church of Light to unprecedentedly worsen. Before Hansa Oh came to the Valley of Sunshine, everything within the Valley of Sunshine operated as Florida fancied. Drawing support from the Church of Light, Florida had complete confidence in replacing the Kyra mercenary band and become the true master of the Valley of Sunshine and control the enormous resources of the Valley of Sunshine. Based on his plan, the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band would have the rights to control the Valley of Sunshine, while Butcher Gustav assisted in the shadows. He would be able to nibble away at the various powers within the Valley of Sunshine and possess everything in the Valley of Sunshine at that time. Unfortunately, Hansa Oh's appearance caused the situation to keep regressing, developing in a completely different trajectory from what he imagined. When Hansa Oh left, he still left behind the cancerous soul destroyer mercenary Ben, nibbling at his hopes and expectations little by little. "My greatest mistake is precisely that I didn't risk everything to kill you in the beginning." Giving Hansa Oh a death stare, Florida gnashed his teeth as he spoke, his voice filled with bitter resentment and hatred. Hansa Oh suddenly laughed, his laughter extremely bright and clear, as if his laughter became a huge winding dragon that soared into the skies. Not just the immediate area, even Lorden and the rest below were able to hear it clearly. "Florida, I truly feel pity for you. You naively believed that with your grandfather's support you would be able to act as you wished in the Valley of Sunshine. On one hand you despicably seized the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band, and on another you collaborated with the most merciless bandit in the shadows. You really think that you are above the law? Hey, what a pity, what a pity. There's not only you who is smart, and it's not your turn to call the shots. Your grandfather wasn't able to protect you your whole life. Now that old bastard Ferguson is dead, you no longer have any cards to play." "Ha, why am I saying so much nonsense to you? In any case you will die soon." Hansa Oh smiled as he mocked Florida. When he heard Hansa Oh's mocking, Florida's expression became extremely downcast, as if someone had stepped on him with a filthy shoe. He glared hatefully at the gradually approaching Hansa Oh, taking a deep breath, and said, "Today only one of us will survive. Of course it is you who will die." Hansa Oh shouted coldly, suddenly speeding up his steps toward Florida. He was like a streak of lightning that cut across the sky, charging towards Florida at great speed. At the same time, the other thousands of gargoyles behind Hansa Oh suddenly scattered into different troops, swarming like locusts toward the experts that were being attacked by the previous group of gargoyles. The little skeleton who rode on the flying bone demon stood majestically on a flat portion of the bone demon's back. With his purple demon eye sparkling, he sized up the battlefield, pointing his 3-meter-long bone spear toward Adam Moonlow. The wings of the bone demon flapped once, directly gliding toward Adam Moonlow. The harpies, frost eagles, Pegasus griffins, wyverns, and various types of magical creatures had all been tamed by the House of Moonlow at high costs. These flying magical beasts were each able to face a few gargoyles at once. Furthermore, they were either carrying a high-ranked swordsman or a mage. In theory, they shouldn't be at much of a disadvantage. Unfortunately, the reality wasn't as such. Although a magical creature and the expert riding it should be able to handle tens of gargoyles, when a swarm of gargoyles suddenly charged over, the Densora was able to shake their confidence. The strong rotting stench was hard to bear, causing more trouble than they expected. There were simply too many gargoyles. When tens of gargoyles attacked a magical creature together, even creatures like harpies and griffins were unable to withstand it. Furthermore, there were also Gilbert and Hyderlania, two tyrannical super-rank magical creatures stirring up trouble. In just a few moments, many experts had either been killed by the gargoyles, or the magical creature they rode had been beat to death, causing them to also fall into the endless abyss. Within the layers of gargoyles, the little skeleton held its 3-meter-long bone spear. The little skeleton and the bone demon were both immune to ordinary spells. As it rode the bone demon, it was incomparably awe-inspiring. While flying toward Adam Moonlow, a harpy brandished its sharp claw toward the little skeleton. Before it could even near the little skeleton, it was pierced through by the little skeleton's 3-meter-long bone spear. After the petite little skeleton had pierced through the several-meter-long harpy, the powerful spear didn't pause and instead followed through to kill the fire mage as well. The little skeleton used the bone spear easily lift up the huge and heavy harpy. With a mysterious tremble of his finger bone, an enormous amount of death chi violently flowed through the bone spear into the harpy's body. The harpy suddenly exploded wildly above his head. Chunks of the harpy's flesh mixed with rich death chi scattered like heavy rocks. Whoever was hit by the flesh of the harpy and was infected by even the tiniest amount of death chi would ice cold and uncomfortable from head to toe, causing their movements to become stiff. As the little skeleton headed toward Adam Moonlow, it had merely got rid of a harpy effortlessly along the way. Suddenly everyone understood the terror of this undead creature. As they dealt what with the countless gargoyles that covered the sky, they were still extremely well coordinated, opening a path for the little skeleton directly toward Adam Moonlow. As Adam Moonlow closely watched Dark Dragon Gilbert, the super rank golden winged rock under him was able to proficiently manipulate wind magic, sending out waves of wind blades in all directions without much movement from its wings. All the gargoyles that were attempting to approach Adam Moonlow were killed one after another by the golden winged rock's wind blades. Facing a golden winged rock, which was a super rank magical creature of the highest level, the swarms of gargoyles were clearly unable to achieve much. Even with most of its feathers missing, the defensive ability of the golden winged rock body was still much stronger than ordinary magical creatures. It was exactly because of this that Hansa Oh didn't waste many gargoyles in attacking Adam Moonlow, merely asking Gilbert to impede him. Having evolved and becoming a rank 2 magical creature, Gilbert could be said to be evenly matched with the golden winged rock that Hansa Oh had previously severely injured. All kinds of toxins and raging flames were shot out, mixing with Lania's reckless attacks. These created a large hindrance to Adam Moonlow and the golden winged rock, causing Adam Moonlow to be pestered beyond his endurance. However, the golden winged rock was a super rank magical creature and Adam Moonlow himself was a Skyrider. With the two of them combined together, their strengths were amplified. Hence Gilbert and Lania were unable to get an advantage. Just as Gilbert was shouting arrogantly at Adam Moonlow as he annoyed him, the little skeleton appeared on its bone demon. When the little skeleton reached the area, his purple demon eye shone as it made peculiar gestures toward Gilbert. The little skeleton first used the bone spear to point at Gilbert before pointing toward the others who were desperately resisting the gargoyles. Soon after, at Gilbert's amazement, the little skeleton then pointed his bone spear at Adam Moonlow before using his other hand to point toward himself. After he finished gesturing, the little skeleton's purple demon eye sparkled as he looked straight at Gilbert. Gilbert's lantern-like eyes stared foolishly at the little skeleton. While Lania was still obstructing Adam Moonlow and the golden winged rock, Gilbert finally asked cautiously, "Are you saying that you want me to attack the others and leave this fellow to you?" The little skeleton's purple demon eye brightened, casually nodding toward Gilbert, implying, "That's right. Get a move on, don't obstruct me anymore." Dark Dragon Gilbert was extremely flabbergasted, attentively watching the little skeleton and the undead creature. He rode somewhat stunned for a moment. "Damn it, you heartless creature, you still aren't coming to help me?" By the side, Lania was desperately fending off Adam Moonlow's attacks, when she suddenly saw that Gilbert, who was originally fighting side by side with her, actually staring blankly at the side. She couldn't help but scold him hastily. Dark Dragon Gilbert quickly came to his senses, looking at the little skeleton. Once again he saw the little skeleton raising the 3-meter-long bone spear and arrogantly charged toward Adam Moonlow. When the 3-meter-long bone spear pointed at Adam Moonlow, an incomparably huge amount of death chi rippled in all directions. It was only at this moment that Gilbert truly felt that the seemingly small body of the little skeleton contained such a frightening mystical power. Gilbert suddenly understood that although he had evolved into a rank 2 magical creature, the little skeleton was actually more terrifying than him, so much so that the little skeleton possessed enough strength to kill Gilbert himself. "Lania, let's go. We'll go and kill others rather than torment this old thing." Having understood the little skeleton's message, Gilbert suddenly shouted loudly toward Lania, "You idiot! Are you crazy? Didn't Master instruct the two of us to impede this old thing? Are you seeking to be punished? Why aren't you coming over to help me?" As Lania spoke, her body gradually became hidden, and soon after an enormous column of water charged toward Adam Moonlow. "There is someone who offered to deal with him. Let's not stay and hinder him any longer. Let's leave." Dark Dragon Gilbert replied loudly, "You coquettish lady, hurry up and come with me." Lania, who had used the column of water to conceal her body, gradually revealed herself. When she saw the little skeleton who was riding the flying bone demon over, Lania suddenly felt a feeling of being between laughter and tears rise within her heart. She then mocked Gilbert, saying, "Stupid dragon, this little skeleton is the volunteer you mentioned?" Just as Lania finished her sentence, the little skeleton's purple demon eye suddenly lit up with glaring purple light. The 3-meter-long bone spear suddenly transmitted a surge of death chi, causing a feeling of desolation to spread in all directions. Lania naturally felt the tremendous aura and was incomparably surprised as she watched the little skeleton fly over. She immediately became silent, and with Gilbert's repeated urging, Lania no longer hesitated, her heart filled with countless doubts as she hurriedly avoided the approaching little skeleton and bone demon flying to Gilbert's side. What is with this little skeleton? Why do I feel a terrifying strength from him. When Lania reached Gilbert's side, she could no longer suppress the puzzlement in her heart, frantically asking Gilbert, "Part 2, don't ask me, I don't know either. I only know that he is Master's first undead creature. However, what I would never be able to understand is how does a little skeleton have the same frightening aura as a bone dragon?" Gilbert blinked his lantern-sized eyes as he explained to Lania. Hearing Gilbert's explanation, Lania was dumbfounded. She couldn't help but cast her line of sight toward Gilbert's master. In an area 50 meters away, Hansa Oh had a ruthless and gloomy expression as he manipulated the demon slayer edge, which was dripping fresh blood, setting out to massacre all the enemies around him. Florida was holed up within layers of protection by his rainbow sickle mercenary band, unceasingly casting various light magic spells to purify the surrounding frantically charging gargoyles. The gargoyles were annihilated one after another by his light magic. As a light mage, Florida was the largest threat to these undead creatures within the group. As he was also the leader of the rainbow sickle mercenary band, his subordinates all surrounded him, doing their utmost to protect him. Florida, who was being protected by the crowd, consumed all his energy to cast light magic spells in succession, purifying all the gargoyles in their immediate area into dust. The low-rank gargoyles were as frail as zombie warriors, being eliminated one after another by the light archmage's light magic. As the battle raged on in the air, it was only Florida's area that didn't have many gargoyles breaking through. Based on the situation, this area ought to be the area where the elites of the three powers felt the most comfortable. However, the reality was that the area Florida was in suffered the most casualties. The number of magical creatures and elites killed far exceeded the number that was besieged by gargoyles in other areas, simply because Hansa Oh was here. As he wielded the demon slayer edge, Hansa Oh stared at Florida like a blood-soaked demon god. Hansa Oh's current strength far exceeded Florida's, if not for the valiant mercenaries from the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band who sacrificed their lives to resist Hansa Oh. Florida would have long since died by Hansa Oh's hand. Despite the sacrifices of the mercenaries and the layers of protection, Florida's leg was still pierced through, resulting in a bloody hole. If not for a swordmaster by his side reacting in time, Florida might have suffered even heavier injuries. In just a moment of effort, the demon slayer edge had killed 5 harpies, 3 griffins, 2 frost eagles, and 13 experts of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band. The drops of scarlet blood that rolled off the demon slayer edge symbolized the experts Florida depended on to still be alive until now. "Hey, how long more can you hide for?" Hansa Oh smiled ruthlessly, tossing a Pegasus corpse downwards as he ridiculed Florida. "The leader, what should we do? Should we retreat?" By Florida's side, the swordmaster who had saved Florida's life looked at the fiend like Hansa Oh, his lips trembling as he asked Florida, "We still have a chance. Don't you see that the number of gargoyles in the sky decreasing? Gargoyles are after all just low-ranked undead creatures. Under the attack of so many spells, they are simply unable to obstruct our progress." Florida, who was hidden in the crowd, inspected the surroundings and replied encouragingly, "But we are only left with 100 people." The swordmaster clearly feared Florida but still stated the facts. "We must obtain victory. Otherwise the three powers would no longer have the chance to hold the greatest power in the Valley of Sunshine." Florida was flustered and exasperated as he bellowed in rage. How could he not know that 2/3 of the experts from the three powers have already died? However, he understood that at this moment they could only persist and fight on. Otherwise the huge number of casualties would have been in vain. Swish swish swish. A large amount of arrows suddenly shot out from the Soul Destroyer mercenary band in the distance. The arrow rain was locked onto the invading magical creatures, and in just a moment more than 10 magical creatures who were nearing the area were suddenly riddled with holes like a hornet's nest. "Everyone retreat." A roar that resounded across the whole area suddenly sounded from a remote place, the sound originating from Cairo mercenary band's Lord. Lord's bald head was incomparably shiny and his expression extremely unsightly. A mage stood by his side casting Sky Zion, describing the battle in the sky to Lord. Although Lord had yet to participate in the battle, there were already other experts from the Cairo mercenary band that had entered the battle in the skies. Seeing many of his trusted brothers dying tragically, Lord knew that the so-called sneak attack had completely failed. Lord had no choice but to berserk and and call for a retreat so as to prevent the losses from increasing. As Lorden's roar resounded through the sky, Florida and Adam Moonlow, who were above, naturally heard it. Without waiting for them to move, the surviving experts of the Cairo mercenary band immediately descended without saying a single word. While Adam Moonlow was forced to repeatedly fall back by the 3-meter-long bone spear-wielding little skeleton, the sullen and depressed feeling in his heart was the strongest in his entire life. He was unable to understand how the little skeleton before him would have such a rich and strong aura of death. The little skeleton's bone spear carried a terrifying corrosive death chi, every attack causing incomparable suffering to Adam Moonlow. If not for the golden winged rock helping him to fend off the attacks and receiving many wounds in the process, the little skeleton might have already pierced through Adam Moonlow's body. What exactly are you?" Adam Moonlow asked, repeated. He could sense that the little skeleton possessed intelligence. Unfortunately, the little skeleton was unable to answer him and instead wielded his bone spear repeatedly, causing Adam Moonlow to retreat little by little. "Master, I can't hold on." After the golden winged rock helped Adam Moonlow withstand a few strikes, it had eventually reached its limits and gently called to Adam Moonlow. At the very same moment, Lorden's loud shouts could be heard from below. Adam Moonlow could only stare blankly for a moment. When he realized that the people from the Cairo mercenary band retreating in an attempt to break away from the battlefield, he suddenly felt a powerless feeling of despair rise in his heart. "Let's go. We'll retreat too." When Adam Moonlow gave the order, he truly felt like crying. Having brought out the hidden cards of the House of Moonlow, Adam Moonlow originally thought that they would be able to effortlessly eliminate the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. Who would have known that the Jinx would appear once again, simply using a swarm of gargoyles that filled the sky to turn around the situation and even causing huge losses. Although this wave of attackers only had 300 people, these were the true elites of the three powers, the foundation they depended on. Each one of them was an expert that could face 10 people alone. But who would have thought that in the end they would suffer such a fate? A shrill cry could suddenly be heard from the golden winged rock. The golden winged rock rolled in pain while saying, Master, there's something happening within my body. I can't take it anymore." A clear popping sound could suddenly be heard from within the golden winged rock's body. The golden winged rock's huge body could be seen withering slowly as fresh blood sprayed out like fine rain. Intense corrosive death chi, which converged within the rich killing intent, suddenly exploded violently within the golden winged rock, causing the interior of the golden winged rock to rapidly shatter and the aura of life fought gradually leave the golden winged rock. In the distance, Hansa Oh, who was preparing to finish Florida off, suddenly detected an extremely familiar aura. Turning toward the aura, he suddenly discovered the changes within the golden winged rock's body. Sensing the familiar sinister killing intent within, Hansa Oh was shocked as he looked at the little skeleton whose purple demon eye sparkled in bright light as he closely watched the golden winged rock. Only Hansa Oh knew that the intense death chi within the golden winged rock was bound into a ball by the mnemonic magic's hidden explosion technique. He had inserted the concealed explosive death chi when the bone spear pierced through the golden winged rock's body, suddenly detonating it when it was unprepared, causing the golden winged rock's innards to suddenly explode. Hansa Oh had already known previously that the little skeleton knew some demonic magic. However, he had never expected that the little skeleton had become so sinister. For an undead creature to use such malicious methods, this made Hansa Oh to truly feel extremely stunned, causing him to sigh. This fellow is truly becoming more and more vicious, able to control such a vicious method. "I truly don't know how he does it," Hansa Oh repeatedly lamented in his heart. "Father, I learned all of these from you. I've inherited part of your intelligence." The little skeleton suddenly transmitted a message as though he knew of Hansa Oh's puzzlement and want to give Hansa Oh an explanation. Hansa Oh was stunned, staring blankly on the spot. "Am I that sinister and malicious?" Hansa Oh laughed bitterly as he thought to himself. "Strike him hard while he's down. I learned this from father as well." The little skeleton transmitted another message over. As Hansa Oh watched in astonishment, the little skeleton rode the bone skeleton and suddenly flew toward Adam Moonlow. Adam Moonlow, who was centraling repeatedly due to the inner explosion of the golden winged rock, wasn't able to even stand still at this moment, simply unable to construct an effective defense. Right at this moment, the little skeleton's bone spear shot over once again. This time around there was no longer the golden winged rock helping him to withstand it. By the time Adam Moonlow could react, the sharp pain from the bone spear had already spread through his whole body. He lowered his head, discovering a huge hole in his chest. The 3-meter-long bone spear which had seized his life flew in a loop after it pierced through his body, returning to the little skeleton's hand once again. The little skeleton's sparkling purple demon eye looked on as Adam Moonlow gradually lost consciousness before turning around to leave. "Father, did I do the right thing?" After the little skeleton killed Adam Moonlow, he sent a message to Hansa Oh once again to seek confirmation. At this point Hansa Oh was thoroughly speechless. Chapter 405. Unable to escape. Not only did the little skeleton have intelligence, it was also a little sinister and ruthless. This really caused Hansa Oh to feel conflicted. However, what Hansa Oh could be sure of was that the little skeleton would be able to survive better in the netherworld. In that realm full of slaughter and invasion, the little skeleton was strong enough to let him feel reassured. With the head of the House of Moonlow dead, the willpower that Florida had just barely maintained finally collapsed. Florida no longer dared to continue staying in the air, desperately yelling for his men to retreat, and flew towards Lord. You are still thinking of escaping." Hansa Oh's cold laugh suddenly arose. Issuing an order, Dark Dragon Gilbert, Hyder, Lania and the little skeleton all abruptly gathered by Hansa Oh's side and fought their way toward Florida. There were still around 20 experts of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band surrounding Florida. Once Florida met up with Lord, killing him would become extremely difficult. This time Hansa Oh was resolute in killing Florida so as to avoid leaving endless trouble for Trunks. When Hansa Oh alone headed towards Florida with murderous intent, the experts that surrounded Florida disregarded everything to attack Hansa Oh. Although Hansa Oh had killed a number of experts along the way, he was still unable to finish off Florida like he'd wanted to. However, with the addition of 2 super-rank magical creatures and the little skeleton, the experts surrounding Florida were unable to threaten them. Hansa Oh only needed to keep his eyes on Florida. The rest were nationally disposed of by the little skeleton and the others. Rain of fire, ice cones, wind blades, lightning and other spells were recklessly aimed at Hansa Oh and the others. Because of this shower of magic, the dim sky suddenly became colorful, as though a group of beautiful fireworks was glamorously blooming open. Hansa Oh's demonic yuan energy circulated. A thin cicada wing-like protective layer surrounded his body. On the outer surface, a large bone shield with bone thorns savagely poking out formed. Most of the spells were blocked by the bone shield. Gilbert and Lania made use of this opportunity to release attacks of toxins and torrential rain. Bearing the murky protective layer, Hansa Oh flashed through the crowd. After continuously shifting a few times, he had already arrived in front of Florida. A dense burst of bone spears suddenly shot out explosively from Hansa Oh. The group of people who were defending against Gilbert and Lania's attacks became even more flustered. At this time, the demon slayer edge in Hansa Oh's hands soundlessly disappeared again and gradually closing in from a hidden angle. The little skeleton who was riding the bone demon had unexpectedly arrived behind Florida's group. It imposingly raised up its 3-meter-long bone lance and thrusting it toward Florida and the others who have just reacted. The rich death chi carried a coldness and desolation that did not exist in this world. Behind Florida's group of people reacted relatively swiftly. Once they felt the violent wind from behind, they realized the danger behind them. When the little skeleton killed Adam Moonlow earlier, as Hansa Oh did not fiercely attack Florida's group as he was watching attentively in surprise, they also had the time to see the whole process. The little skeleton who was able to kill Adam Moonlow, who was riding the golden winged rock, was definitely as dangerous to Florida as Hansa Oh himself. Hence he immediately shouted loudly once he saw the little skeleton attacking from behind them. With the current state of the situation, it was clear that the number of people assisting Florida wasn't enough. With Gilbert and Lania attacking from the sides, the overbearing Hansa Oh attacked from the front, and suddenly there was an otherworldly powerhouse appearing behind them. If they were focused on one side, they wouldn't be able to resist another. Facing the waves of simultaneous attacks, Florida suddenly felt an intense unease within his heart. He looked at Hansa Oh, who was sneering as he killed his way over, suddenly realizing that Hansa Oh's weapon had disappeared. Florida was immediately terror-stricken when he came to this realization. Unfortunately, his realization was still too late. The group of experts that had been distributing their efforts to deal with the three creatures was momentarily too busy to attend to Florida. When they heard a sharp cry, they realized that there was a bad turn of events. Florida, who was exerting himself to support his defense of the light and lightning spells to their peaks, was still unable to stop the Demon Slayer wretch. His lightning and light magic barrier shattered into tiny glass-like specks. The Demon Slayer wretch blasted through Florida's barrier and pierced through his neck, leaving behind a bloody hole. The hatred in Florida's eyes gradually rescinded. Without the support of mental energy, Florida's body fell sharply. A leader of the four big powers in the Valley of Sunshine had eventually died by Hansa Oh's hand. When the experts from the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band who had been tightly surrounding Florida saw Hansa Oh seizing the chance to kill Florida, a feeling of despair and helplessness arose in their hearts. At this moment, the attacks of the little skeleton Gilbert and the others fell like torrential rain, immediately taking another 10 lives. After Florida died, the first wave of experts no longer had a leader. The remaining tens of experts desperately started to retreat but continued to be killed by Hansa Oh's group. Before they could reach Lorden, another 20-odd people had died. Of the 300 experts and the many flying magical creatures that had participated in the battle, only 19 people and 11 magical beasts had returned to Lorden's area alive. Adam, Moonlow and Florida of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band would both disappear forever from the power struggle within the Valley of Sunshine. Lorden, it's been a while. Chasing after the enemy mercenaries, Hansa Oh arrogantly stood in the sky as he mockingly greeted Lorden. On both sides of Hansa Oh were the two super-rank magical creatures and the little skeleton. Several hundred gargoyles were like guards as they quietly flapped their wings behind Hansa Oh. Having calculated their altitude, Hansa Oh wasn't afraid of arrows being shot from below. Lorden raised his head to stare at the sky. Seeing Hansa Oh looking at him derisively, all sorts of feelings suddenly appeared in his heart. The corpses of Florida and Adam Moonlow were laid out by Lorden's side. With the other two leaders of the three powers dead, Lorden ought to be happy. But as he looked at Hansa Oh, Lorden only felt increasingly flustered. Yes, we have not seen each other for a while. I should have expected that you had arrived long ago. Apart from you, Trunks simply didn't have any other cards. Lorden sighed before taking a deep breath. He then looked at Hansa Oh and said, as matters stand, I don't have any other things to say. That's right. It was indeed me that kidnapped Trunks, but I don't regret it. With the current situation within the Valley of Sunshine, if Lorden didn't act to deal with Trunks, the Soul Destroyer mercenary band would replace the Kyra mercenary band's position in the Valley of Sunshine sooner or later. Naturally, he had to think of his subordinates, thus, what he did was understandable. Indeed, there is nothing much to say. From today onwards, Kyra mercenary band will be my mortal enemy. Lorden, try your best. Hansa Oh smiled as he looked at Lorden. He took one last glance at Florida and Adam Moonlow's corpses and then headed back towards the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. The first wave of attacks from these powers had resulted in a devastating price. Not only did this lose their most capable elites, even Florida and Adam Moonlow were killed. In such a situation, the group that had formed out of benefits would be powerless against the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. Humans were always selfish. With Florida and Adam Moonlow dead, Hansa Oh was almost certain that the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band and the House of Moonlow would immediately break out into chaos, especially Florida's Rainbow Sickle mercenary band, which would definitely fall into a period of civil strife or break apart. In that case, the group's threat to the Soul Destroyer mercenary band will decrease substantially. Hansa Oh only needed to observe as they collapsed. Hence he left carefully. Things indeed developed as Hansa Oh had predicted. After Hansa Oh left, the people from the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band and the House of Moonlow immediately sank into strife. In particular, the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band had immediately split into a few smaller groups. Only a small portion strived for revenge. The remaining majority advocated leaving this place as soon as possible. The House of Moonlow was slightly better off, since Adam Moonlow was after all their senior. As the majority of the authority within the House of Moonlow were in the hands hundreds of relatives. Most were yelling sorrowfully about first taking revenge for Adam Moonlow before deciding on other matters. The sudden quarrels disrupted Lorden's thoughts. Looking at the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band which was already prepared to leave and the frightened leaders of the small powers, Lorden suddenly had a helpless feeling. So many flying magical creatures had been killed. Wanting to rely on flying magical creatures to enter the Soul Destroyer mercenary band was completely impossible. With the existence of spatial rings, trying to starve the Soul Destroyer mercenary band to death with a siege was also impossible. The only way was to attack head-on. However, this method would come at a large cost which they simply couldn't afford. At this moment Lorden had no confidence in victory. As he looked at the people of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band and the House of Moonlow arguing endlessly, he suddenly felt somewhat helpless. Chief, should we make use of this opportunity to eliminate the two groups? While Lorden was feeling vexed, Harris suddenly approached and lowered his voice as he made a vicious suggestion. Glancing at Harris before looking in the direction that Hansa Oh had left, he smiled bitterly and said, "That fellow definitely wishes for us to do so. If we were to fight with those other two parties, it would be following his wishes." Once all three groups depleted their power and energy, the master of the Valley of Sunshine would really be the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. Harris was stunned for a moment. He processed Lorden's words for a while before nodding and saying, "Chief is still more farsighted. In any case, with Florida and Adam Moonlow's deaths, we have two fewer enemies. The current Rainbow Sickle mercenary band and House of Moonlow are no longer enemies to fear." That is also true. However, if we are unable to eliminate the Soul Destroyer mercenary band now, their reputation will increase greatly. In the future, other than our Kyra mercenary band, there will no longer be any powers that can shake their position. I'm unsure if this is fortune or misfortune, Lorden replied painfully. Just as Lorden and Harris were discussing quietly, some of the leaders of the smaller mercenary bands had walked over together. One of them gloomily looked at Lorden and said, "Chief Lorden, now that the situation has become like this, I think we no longer have the opportunity to destroy the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. If the Kyra mercenary band wants us to spearhead the attack and essentially throw our lives away, I apologize. We are unwilling to exchange the price of our brothers' lives for the benefits that you are giving us. Based on the current situation, I feel that we should just disperse." "I agree. That place is too hard to attack. Without the assistance of flying magical creatures, we simply have no chance of winning at all," a leader of another small mercenary band shouted. It seemed that there weren't just one or two of them who had such thoughts. All of them who had walked over together probably already planned to leave. "A bunch of short-sighted fellows." Lorden cursed them inwardly. After being silent for a moment, he said, "Consider this carefully. If we are unable to eliminate the Soul Destroyer mercenary band now, everyone that participated in this attack will all suffer a calamity. Our Kyra mercenary band has sufficient strength and aren't afraid of Trunk's revenge. As for you guys, it might become a troublesome matter. Chief Lorden need not to remind us of that. We've naturally also thought of it." That person replied, "Then do as you'd like. In any case, I've already reminded you guys. When the time comes where Trunks seeks you all out for revenge, don't come and find me." Lorden coldly snorted and disdained upon continuing to talk to them. These people looked at each other simultaneously, bidding their farewells before leading their members to leave. The majority of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band had lost their faith in Lorden once Florida died. They had already left without even notifying him. Of the 6,000 people that had come to attack the Soul Destroyer mercenary band, only around 3,000 were still alive. If they wanted to attack the base of the Soul Destroyer mercenary band without flying magical creatures, it wouldn't be just a problem of the number of casualties. Instead, the question would be if they would be able to eliminate the Soul Destroyer mercenary band after suffering heavy casualties.